Welcome to the Young Crones Cafe, where you can get a magic brew full of all sorts of information, both witchy and practical.
Grab a cup of coffee and join us. I'm Elizabeth, a wordsmith.
And I'm Dave, a modern-day sage.
We are going to talk about various witchcraft and life topics from a slightly more mature perspective, at least most of the time.
Thanks for joining us.
Today's metaphysical kernel of thought is meditation. A practice of meditation has been part of many religious traditions for centuries and called by many different names along the way. It can best be defined as thinking deeply or focusing one's mind for a period of time for spiritual purposes or as a method of relaxation. On the path, we often use a short meditation period as part of our rituals in order to focus ourselves for a working we are going to do or to connect with a specific energy before we ask for assistance. We also use short guided meditations for focusing on a particular area of self or energy we wish to establish a deeper connection with during our cross-quarter ice rituals. Each of us also tries to maintain a regular practice of meditation as part of our daily spiritual practices. The benefits of such a practice can include an increased ability to focus, paying better attention to present moments, improved sleep, and increased energy on the mundane level. It can also be a way to start bringing balance to our personal lives. Magically, it has become a way to better connect the parts of our sacred three, body, mind, and spirit, to each other, not to mention that increased ability to focus carries over when we are working spells. Establishing some type of regular meditation practice requires making a personal commitment to the process. There are all types of reasons many of us have to work through in order to make this commitment, including thinking we aren't doing it right somehow, we are too tired, we cannot concentrate long enough, or we don't have enough time in our day. Breaking it up into 10-minute increments throughout the day is a way to make time, and it can be just as beneficial as meditating for longer periods. One other thing that many don't consider is that the practice of meditation doesn't have to be just sitting around and breathing. It can be a movement-based practice, such as while taking a walk or even doing the dishes. There can be something very soothing about water and bubbles, after all. Any mundane, repetitive task can also work. Good evening, Dave.
Hi, Elizabeth. How are you?
I am counting down the days till I go see the orthopedic doctor, and you're off to let them tinker under the hood next week. So,
well, yeah, apparently I have a buildup of peanut butter in one of my arteries, but they're going to go and take care of it for me. So.
Yes. Well, at least it's still goopy enough and it hasn't hardened yet.
That's what we're calling it anyway.
So it's not stale peanut butter. How's that?
In my lifetime, that has never been a thing. It does not exist in my presence.
Yeah,
there is no such thing as stale peanut butter because it's never going to be around that long.
No, there's certain foods like that at my house. They're called leftovers. I don't know what they look like anymore.
Right, right.
And I may see a leftover in my lifetime, but I'm not holding my breath. Because by the time I'm ready to see leftovers, I'll have great-grandchildren show up eating them. So, I won't win. However,
right.
Yeah, let's try and stay a little bit on topic and not jump down the rabbit hole quite so early in the discussion. We're talking about meditation tonight, which... Okay, yeah, exactly. It can be terribly beneficial. And the big thing, I think...
I just love it. It's part of it is a function of the mood that you're in, but I don't know that I have ever heard someone pair together the two words terribly and beneficial. Yeah. I just wanted to point that out.
I'm good at oxymorons sometimes. But, okay, if you don't know what that is, go look it up. However,
here's your sign.
Yes, the practice of meditation is basically either focusing your mind on something or not focusing your mind on something, depending on what type of meditation you're personally practicing. But the idea is there's all sorts of benefits to it, and it does help in the practice of witchcraft because one of the benefits is the increased ability to focus. However, the big part with a lot of people is I don't have time to meditate, or I don't want to make the commitment to meditate. So let's talk about the commitment piece first briefly. My take on that is you can commit to something without doing it every single day.
Sure.
And not beating yourself up if you plan to do it and don't get to it because life got in the way.
Well, first off, I'm just going to back up a quick step and say, for me, meditation really comes in a couple of different forms.
Okay.
Three that I can identify. There's a meditation where I am trying to take my place or myself to a place of null or of nothing, where I'm not thinking about anything. I'm simply breathing and existing, and that form of meditation, which for me is the most healing and the most beneficial for my physical circumstances anyway. There's also, I consider prayer or divining or manifesting or any of those things a form of meditation.
Okay.
And I also consider doing mundane, repetitive tasks, anything from walking to, I've spent years working in factories and whatnot. You put the part in, you close the clamp, you push the button. When the machine's done, you take the clamp loose, you take the part out, and you get a new part.
And do it all
any of those kind of things, there tends to be I develop a mantra or a chant or a rhythm to those. So kind of those three different kind of meditations.
Yeah.
And I think we're mostly, at least early on, we're talking about the null or the trying to find a restful and a healing space.
Yeah, which can be the most difficult because our own thoughts get in the way.
Sure.
And we get frustrated and we want to give up, which is why we were talking about in the actual reading, breaking it up into 10-minute or even 5-minute.
Sure.
Don't think that the successful practice of meditation means you can do that for hours on end.
Thanks for tying that back together, because what I was getting at is, you had mentioned, don't beat yourself up for not doing it. And I can remember at least 3 or 4 different times where I've set up like a meditation calendar. And what a meditation calendar turns out to be for me in its practical effect is a device that I can use to beat myself up about the fact that I haven't meditated for 3 or 4 days in a row.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm leaning away from that, and what I've been trying to practice more recently is meditate when I think of it. Just try to think of it more often.
Yeah, exactly. This is what I mean. You make the commitment to the practice. Just commit to the practice.
It's practice. When you get a free 5 minutes, practice. Yeah.
Please, exactly. Don't feel like, okay, I have to sit aside an hour every morning and every evening to meditate. Therein lies insanity. Okay? Because your phone will ring, your children will come banging at the door for something. And I have yet to find a parent who can successfully find an hour if the kids are awake. And by the time they're in bed and you've done the laundry and the dishes and picked up whatever disaster they left in the living room, you're ready for bed. And I'm sorry, laying down to meditate at that point, and even that doesn't work because you're asleep and snoring before you get 2 minutes to practice it.
Right.
Though I will admit going to the doctor.
I'm gonna pick back into that day that you described, just because one of the things that we're looking for is how can we find the time to meditate, and during there you mentioned doing the dishes.
Oh yeah, please. That for me is
while you're doing that can be a very meditative thing. For me, I meditate when I mow my lawn. It's a walking meditation.
Because I can just see you doing that. It's a walking meditation.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, for me it's dishes. It always has been. I can you get into a rhythm. the plates, go in on one side, then you rinse them, they go in the dish drainer on the other, and I'm back and forth, and there's water, which is always one of my favorite things, and there's bubbles, and
Right.
exactly. I've been known to meditate in the shower. I have been known, how when you go to the doctor's office nowadays, at least when you're my age, they take your blood pressure every time.
Yep.
Now, 9 times out of 10, getting to the doctor's office, you've been in traffic, you've had to do paperwork, you've had to sit around and wait in the waiting room longer than you think you should to get that little room where they're going to take your blood pressure. I have discovered that if I sit there and close my eyes for a minute before, while they're getting the machine ready and do the breathing in and out, just focus on my breathing, I can drop my blood pressure before they turn the machine on.
Sure. It's funny that you mentioned that, because when I was in my last doctor's appointment, I caught myself out in the waiting room, just sort of, okay, yep, I'm aware that there's a TV in the corner. I'm aware that there's a door and people talking, and just kind of disappearing into my breathing, sitting in the waiting room. Yep.
Oh, yeah, that's a great time to do it.
It's also, for me, it's very calming in a electrophysical way. I mean, my body itself, all my electrochemical neuronic stuff tends to slow down, and so I can be calmer. I can make clearer and, in most cases, more effective decisions.
Yeah.
So you become more healthy, period, every single time that you meditate, because you're helping restore balance, you're helping restore your limbic system.
That whole homeostasis thing. And
Absolutely.
it's a great way, when you think about it, to balance, as we say, that sacred tree of body, mind, and spirit. At least for that minute, everything is kind of aligned when you're in the right space. And the idea is to figure out what practice works best for you. I know some people who have apps that they're big believers. There's different meditation apps.
I will go ahead and name a couple that I have tried, simply because while they are commercial endeavors, I've also paid for both of them in the past, and they both made a huge difference. And that's an app called Calm, and another one called Headspace. They both kind of come from different branches and different ideas, but both of them can be life-changing. Absolutely.
I love Headspace.com because one thing they have a course, for want of a better word, almost in beginning meditation, and the meditations are 10 minutes long. Isn't that amazing?
Yep.
And I'm sorry, I'm a sucker for the guy's voice, because he's the guy who they have,
Andy Puttycombe. Yep.
Ex-Tibetan Buddhist monk who's from Australia. And I am a sucker for that whole accent kind of thing, because my dad was from England. I have cousins who live in the outback.
He does have a wonderful, wonderful speaking voice. And a wonderful energy. Yep.
Yeah, and it just allows me to just focus in on what he's saying. And like I said, and that 10-minute course is free. You don't have to pay for that one.
Well, and even if you're not the kind of person that's driven by apps and that kind of thing, I was just going to describe one of the simplest ways that I described to a friend recently of a way to get started, and that's, I live near a river. I'm just a block and a half off the Genesee here, so I can go over and sit and watch the river flow by, which, okay, visually that's not a big thing. It's a calm river. But the idea is that here I'm sitting in the middle of the city, so there's some traffic noise, and there's some people noise, and there's some industrial noise,
and there's some
aircraft, birds. What I'll do is I'll sit there on the side of the river and try to listen underneath all of that noise to try to hear the river flow by.
Yep.
Try to hear, I know this sounds corny as hell, but try to hear the planet that you're sitting on. There is a pace, there is a rhythm, there is a breathing that's there. And if you can strive to hear that, even if you're not a person who visualizes, it will help teach you that all of the other noises are just part of the environment, and you can listen for specific frequencies or branches or vibrations.
Yep. I'll do that when I have a new rock.
Yep. I know you always will sit with the rock for a while until you vibrate with each other.
Yeah, we do. And I get a sense of what it is meant to be doing. Like you can look up correspondences for anything.
Right.
And same with plants and rocks and everything. And I'll look up what somebody has said about what this rock is supposed to be for.
Right.
When I sit with it, sometimes the rock will agree with what I found, and I'll get kind of that is a bullshit.
Yeah, between you and I in your world, this is what you can see me as. Because that's what my stuff will do with me.
Yeah, and rocks do that for me.
Yep.
Like you said, and I think it's a matter. I think the biggest part of meditation is you learn how to listen for what's important.
I love the way that you said that. That was really profound. That was special.
Yeah, well, it harks back to like the 11th step, if you have ever heard of it.
Right.
Where they talk about we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with the God of our understanding.
Sure.
That means prayer means I'm putting my spell work, intentions, whatever out into the universe. And I can keep doing that over and over. And meditation is, if I'm putting all that out there, I damn well better listen for the universe's answers.
So you just made a wonderful teaser on something I'm going to be talking about later on in this week's episode.
Perfect. Yes.
For our listeners, if you want to check out this episode's tip, trick, or witchy hint, I'm going to talk about listening for the sound of the planet underneath us, and offer some neat little 5, 10, 15-minute timers.
Oh, I like it. So
natural-based or elemental timers.
Oh, I like it. So with that being said, anything you want to add about a practice of meditation?
Well, I want it said that people get kind of a narrow idea, and that's why I mentioned earlier on, walking meditations and mowing the lawn or prayer, or when I'm doing something repetitive in a factory, having a chant or a mantra. Those things, when we say them over and over and over again, become magic. They become psalms or hymns, or the best way I can describe it is if you could picture the spiritual energy among a group of workers out in the field that are all swinging their axes or picking cotton or any of these sort of things where people would do in a group and in a community. They would sing together and they would get a rhythm and they would form a group congregated in purpose. And so let's not rule out just being in that sort of group thing with a group of others that are doing the same activity. That is a form of meditation, because you are all, I work in a small place that steam presses and equipment in between people. Mm-hmm. So we all have our own little energy bubbles, and we all affect the energy of the room around us. And when we get in a rhythm, you could almost picture us singing old gospel tunes side by side, because we're in that congregated place. I just wanted to recognize that in its own way is indeed a form of meditation.
Oh, I agree. And I will stress again that when we talk about making a commitment to the practice, it means, okay, I'm going to value what I can get from meditation, and I'm going to find ways to incorporate it into my life as much as I can.
Yeah, every time I think of it.
Yeah, pretty much. Even if it's just I take 5 deep breaths and stop for a second.
Well, and that's what I was going to finish with, is my little sort of micro reset that I use here at the house. Is there's a tree out behind the house that and Susie and I for years referred to as grandfather.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just go out and stand on the back deck and take 3 deep breaths for my body, mind, and spirit. And then I'll look up and I'll say, "Greetings, grandfather." And then I'll just listen. Mm-hmm. Because I'm not out there It's not Santa Claus. I'm not out there to tell them what I want. I'm not out there to work magic. I'm not out there to transmit my desires into the universe. I'm out there to breathe for a minute and listen.
Yeah. And I think that's important.
Yeah. That's at the root of the essence of it. How was it that you said it? And meditation is the art of listening to only what's important.
Yeah, and listening for what's important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes we need to remember that.
Sure.
And what if we can't get to it right this minute?
Well, that's just it. Yep. We can always find 3 breaths when we need those 3 breaths.
Yeah, and the other piece is that's the commitment, is we know we are going to find the time to listen. It may not be right this minute, and maybe we haven't done it in a week, but that doesn't mean we're not going to get back to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the important piece, is we've made the commitment.
We're trying.
We're trying. Exactly.
Trying is growing.
Yeah, exactly. So with that being said, do check out the tip, trick, and witchy hint that Dave mentioned.
Yeah, I've got some ideas for different elemental representations of a rough timer that'll give you just that few minutes that you need to go listen to your own grandfather tree.
Exactly. So with that being said, may you find mirth and reverence in all things.
Be safe, be kind, and be loved.
Practices of the path. These are the hows and whats that we, as practitioners on the path, actually do in our own lives. Everything from the various tools that we work with, as well as those we don't and why, to the solar and lunar cycles, herbs we use, crystals and stones that we work with, candles, incenses, and anything else we come up with that can give an understanding of what we personally do with our magical practices. And this week, I want to talk especially about the idea of affordable witchcraft.
Everyday common stuff.
Well, yeah, that, and remember being like a brand new witch way back in the day, and somehow we get these ideas, or at least some of us do in our heads, that we have to have all this accoutrement, as they say. And it's got to be the shiniest and the newest and, i.e., expensive, in order to successfully be considered a witch or practice effectively and
Right.
You really don't need all the fancy stuff. You really don't need any stuff at all. But we're kind of like magpies, I think, witches in a lot of ways, because we like shiny stuff and we tend to collect things.
I think that's true, sure.
In that respect. So there are ways to do this and still be kind of budget friendly and practical.
And just as an example, the first wand that I ever made with the intention of this is to be my magic wand, I have it. It's upstairs in my wand holder, and I've lost and gained a lot of things through those last 25 years, but I still have that. It's just a stick that I used a soldering iron to wood burn some symbols and some glyphs into the side of it, and then I painted it in a couple of spots with some nail polish, and I glued a feather to it. It's just a stick, but it's my stick. And it's very precious, and I have less than, I'm going to say, $5 invested in it over its entire lifetime.
But think about it, and you went out and found the stick.
Yep.
And that's what I mean by the practicality of it all.
Sure.
If you practiced witchcraft, I don't know, 300 years ago, you had a cooking pot in the fireplace, which worked just fine for the cauldron. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. You didn't have a separate pot for your magic.
You didn't need a separate pot, where nowadays we probably at least have a miniature 1 or 2 or 10 hanging around. And you don't necessarily need it, but if you're going to go out and find stuff, okay, if you're looking for stuff for tools, and you really look for tools and that kind of thing, and then there's other supplies that we would go out and buy, or decor for your altar or whatever. See what I figured out a while ago, that there are basically 7 types of places you can go if you're looking.
Okay.
Okay.
Now you've got my curiosity.
Yeah, okay. First of all, your own house.
Right.
Take a look around and see what you got on hand that you could use for your personal practices in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Think about coming in your front door and pretending it's not your house for a minute. And then you look around and see what you got. And sometimes it gives you a whole different perspective on stuff you actually already have on hand.
Sure, I can see that.
Those ubiquitous, number 2 is those ubiquitous dollar stores where everything's $1 or around $1.
Right.
You'd be surprised the little things you can find in there. Mm-hmm. Everything from, 5 tea lights for $1 to incense cones, which are a little off-brand but can work just fine outdoors if you want them for something.
They still make smoke for a few minutes. Yeah, absolutely.
All sorts of quote-unquote seasonal decor.
One of my favorite things that I will actually go specifically to a dollar store for is the little bundles of the bamboo skewers.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's one that they always have them, and I seem to use them a lot in ritual practice for some reason. Yeah. I've always got a couple of bundles of those around.
Yes.
It's like Q-tips.
Any kind of secondhand store.
So this is what I wanted to delve into a little bit myself, in that I have a thing that I call granny plates.
Okay, yep.
And I have a stack of these things, and they're all over my house. And I will go to either a Salvation Army or a Savers, or in your area, whatever kind of
whatever
secondhand donated co-op. Here, come look at some stuff that still has some life in it. It just needs a new family.
Mm-hmm.
And I look for mismatched, odd, weird little plates and bowls, usually either glass or silver.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the kind of thing, the way I describe it is when I pick this mismatched orange and green weird bowl up, I can picture that it sat on somebody's grandmother's windowsill for like 30 years with candies in it or something like that. And so it has so many decades of that homey kind of Granny's candy dish sort of magic. And what it is I have just created the whole backstory and infused this object with what it's sort of like a tea party when you're a child or whatever. But this little 25-cent or 50-cent bowl is now going to be a place where I put my flower petals when I take them off the grandmother rose. So I have these little granny dishes all over the house, and they all pretty much come from, like you say, secondhand or co-op places.
I love going and finding glass ashtrays. They make perfect candle holders because ashtrays are built to be full of ash and
take the heat
heat and all of that. And like you said, any old silver stuff is great for. Sue and I used to have this great tray we would use for housel that we would carry stuff around on that was silver that one of us found at a secondhand store somewhere. So you can find all kinds of things at secondhand stores. You'd be surprised. And you're supporting your local charity at the same time.
I'm sorry, I just have to mention that you can, in fact, find a raspberry beret in a secondhand store.
Oh, yes, you can.
Okay.
Okay. Moving on. Craft stores.
Okay.
Okay, if you go to like a Michael's or somewhere else, there's certain one whose initials are H&L that I refuse to shop at.
Right. Yeah.
Health insurance, but
any place that you can go and buy the styrofoam that you stuff fake flowers in is considered a craft store.
Yes, exactly, and
or popsicle sticks.
You'd be surprised what you can make with popsicle sticks.
Hey, I have popsicle sticks here. Don't lie.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, glue and glitter, and they used to be called pipe cleaners.
Hold, please.
Yes.
Mine is a non-glitter house.
Okay.
I have the glue. I have the tongue depressors. I do not tolerate the glitter well. Just want that to go out there on record.
You do know you can buy glitter glue now, where the glitter's in the glue so it doesn't go all over. However, I digress.
You can use that out in the yard, honey.
Exactly. No, but I digress. Or pipe cleaners that you
Yeah,
can.
or I mentioned earlier Q-tips. I'm a big fan of Q-tips.
Shall we discuss that pipe cleaners are now called fuzzy sticks?
Okay.
To be politically correct, they are now called fuzzy sticks, but felt squares or skeins of yarn, or in my case, the nice little embroidery floss that are yards and yards of a particular color
Yep.
that are about 50 cents a piece, and you can make all
Yep.
sorts of witches' ladder braids and all sorts of other things with those. Okay, big box stores, which is kind of an odd point, but various herbs all over the grocery section, fresh, dried in the little shaker jars that are $1, which are also
Yep.
at the dollar stores in a lot of places. And
you bring up a good point in that the eye that we're shopping here with isn't necessarily to get spices that are good enough that you would eat.
no,
Just something to have as a correspondence or to use for rituals. So you could literally get the cheapest thing of paprika that you can find, knowing that no, you're not going to be using this as a gourmet. You're going to be using it as a representative of Earth.
or something else,
Right.
something spicy anyway. But big box stores actually have all sorts of candles in all shapes and sizes,
Mm-hmm.
in all colors.
Yep.
You know, and they also have all sorts of cheap ass seasonal items for decor. Have you noticed
Sure.
in the front of your big box store, they have a seasonal couple of rows in there? Right
Yep.
now, everything's out for the 4th of July and pool season. And then it'll move on to back to school and then Halloween and Thanksgiving and Christmas. And the day of the holiday, if you've got room to store stuff, you can clean up with decor because everything's like 75% off.
I did not know that.
Oh, yeah. And you can box it up for next year. Because I have done that where you go in and it's like the day after Halloween and all that decor that they didn't sell that you wouldn't pay that outrageous price for the day before
Right.
is now on clearance.
Okay.
So there is that. Okay. And of course, there's your local metaphysical store if you happen to be lucky to have one.
If you have one nearby, absolutely. If not, go out in the woods.
Yeah, pretty much. But you can get, rocks, lots of rocks, crystals.
I was just thinking, I could get rocks thrown at me.
Well, so can I.
I
But,
sometimes do.
if you're looking for a specific rock and you don't need even a big fancy piece, most metaphysical stores have the tumbled ones or small raw pieces for $1 or $2.
Sure.
As opposed to the big giant crystals that's, $187 somewhere else.
Right.
Or other magical items, tarot decks, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And often they have stuff on consignment from local witches, so you are supporting your local witchy economy as well. And last but not least, there's always the internet. If you Google something that you need or want, you'd be surprised at how many options show up.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can comparison shop if you're stuck at home.
Well, and if you have a particular supply or something that you recognize that you're just going to be a regular consumer of it.
Oh, sure.
And I'm using tea lights as an example. Mm-hmm. When I order tea lights, I'll order a few hundred, a few of those blister packs of tea lights, because instead of paying the shipping, when I know I'm going through 2 or 3 a day, you know what I mean? Yeah, I like the idea of buying things in bulk when you buy that way, because as long as you have, the means and the ability to store the stuff, candles don't go bad.
No,
but
they really
more and more extra trips with the trucks to deliver actually is kind of an anti-green thing.
Yeah, it is exactly. And so the whole idea is, I mean, we've given you some places to go looking for stuff, and you really don't need all the stuff anyway, but we all have things we like.
Well, I would say we all have a tendency, as curious pattern matching primates, we have a tendency to have something newish or shiny-ish or different-ish in our field of view. It makes us feel good.
Yeah, exactly. And if we can do it inexpensively,
Yep.
And get something magical out of it at the same time.
Well, and at the end of the day, too, if I don't have the time or the resources or what have you to get, say, for example, a green candle.
White.
All I need is a piece of paper and a pencil. And if I just draw a little image of a green candle, or in my world, because I don't draw real well, if I just make a rectangle and write the words green candle in it, and then write the word lit above it, I have a green candle.
Yes, or in my world, I always seem to have white candles. That's
Yep.
just the way. There seems to be a surplus of those, especially with tea lights.
Yeah, what I'm saying is just taking a piece of paper and draw the representation of what it is that you need. Because once you have that totem, as it were, then your metaphysical performance is going to be as good as if you had the actual object in front of you.
Yeah, and the important thing, in spite of all of the different items we've mentioned or places to go looking to get items, in honesty, you're the magic anyway. And you really don't need any of it. And
It's
we'll
not
go
the
back
color
to
in the candle, it's magic in the flame. Yep.
exactly. And the other piece, there was a famous pagan years ago who's one of the original podcasters named Peter Patton, who basically used to say, if you can't do magic naked in a bomb shelter, you're not doing it right.
Right.
So his idea was, you don't need shit to actually do magic. And you just have to want to do magic.
Yep.
Before we go, we would like to present you with a tip or trick or witchy hint, just something to make your day go better, because we live in a mixture of the magical and the mundane.
For this episode, our tip, trick, or witchy hint is about taking time to listen for the magic. It occurred to me the other day that we spend a lot of our spiritual practice time doing our practices or doing our magic. We're always scrying or divining or praying or manifesting or creating or wishing or casting. A lot of our practices, as we talk about them on the path, talk about those things that we are actively doing. So we are constantly, it just seemed to me, speaking to or transmitting to the universe. So it occurred to me that perhaps for some meditation or for some of our spiritual practices that we try to develop as habits, that we talk about and include the idea of passive contemplation, the idea of just listening. I mean, we've already acknowledged that we spend a lot of time telling the universe or speaking to the universe those things that we're trying to create. We kind of lose sight of the fact that sometimes what we might need to do is just sit and listen and hear the magic happen around us. Elizabeth and I were having a discussion earlier about a place that I go to over near the river, and I'll sit, and my idea is that even though I'm in the middle of a city, I don't hear the traffic, I don't hear the birds, I don't hear the noise or the sirens or the manufacturing or transit or any of the other urban noises. I sort of block those out of my head as I meditate, and I try actively to listen to the sound of the river flowing by where I'm sitting next to it. Take time to try to hear the planet that you're sitting on, the sounds of the planet growing and breathing beneath your butt, so to speak. My idea here is, like I had mentioned to her, taking time to step out back and hear the breeze through my favorite grandfather tree, and just not saying or transmitting or speaking to the tree like a little boy writing a letter to Santa Claus. Dear Santa Claus, please give me such and such. But just listening to the tree and listening to it tell its story, and clearing some space and some time in my mind so that inspiration can arrive, or healing thoughts can arrive, or maybe Sue can whisper something to me. The entire point is, as I say, just taking some time to listen and hear what the universe has to say to us. Hear the river flow beneath you, so to speak. The purpose here is to receive, and if nothing else, balance with spending some time quiet. Now, the second part of this, taking time to listen for magic, I wanted to have a little bit of fun. So my first idea, my first experiment with this is the other day I took a single incense cone and a lighter, and I walked over and I sat by the river, and I didn't need my phone. I didn't need to be distracted. I didn't need a clock. I didn't need a timer. All I did was I just lit the incense cone. I set it on a stone in front of me. I sat down on the ground, and I watched the smoke from the incense. I just sat there for that few minutes. I didn't need to pay attention to how much time had passed. It didn't matter if it had been 1 minute or 5 minutes. I sat there until that incense cone went out, just listening, just breathing, letting my body, my mind, and my spirit come to sort of an equilibrium. And it was a very, very cool experience for me. So on the way back, walking over to the house, I'm thinking, okay, so as it turns out, the average incense cone is going to burn somewhere between 10 and 20 minutes. So what other elements could I come up with for natural element-based timers that would be around that kind of a time frame? So what I found was, as I said, an incense cone, which for me represents air, is about 10, 15, 20 minutes, somewhere in that range. I've learned that the average birthday candle, just a little pack that you can buy at the grocery store, a birthday candle stuck in the ground and lit, will burn for roughly 15 to 20 minutes. So you could do the same thing with fire. Just light the candle, watch the flame, and it doesn't matter if it's been 1 minute or 3 minutes or 5 minutes. Just sit and breathe until the flame is gone. Moving on, an idea for a water timer. I had sort of come across this trick before, but I'll direct my listeners right to YouTube. Just go to YouTube and search for a water timer or water clock. And there's actually a very convenient, neat way that one can cut a plastic bottle and turn it into a water clock. And so there's a little bit of a craft project, but what you'll end up with is a timer that you'll pour water into, and you'll be able to watch the water drip or slowly stream, much like an hourglass. And you'll be able to just sit there and breathe and pay attention to nothing but the drips of the water and whatever the universe has to say until the water is out. Coming back around to Earth, the Earth timer idea was actually kind of the toughest for me, because I know of natural ways where I can use dirt to be able to measure the passage of time, but it's more a matter of hours. You can scratch a bunch of dirt and you get a nice sort of a dark, clean, moist, at least in my area. When you rake or scratch a bunch of dirt, you get dark-looking, moist earth. And then after a couple of hours, it will dry out and start to turn a little bit more gray or a little more ashy color. but that only works along the time frame of a couple of hours. So the best thing that I could come up with for an earth-based timer idea would be either to hit your local thrift store, like Elizabeth and I were mentioning earlier, and look in their games section. A lot of times there will be little sand hourglass or sand timers in there. Sometimes they're 3 minutes, sometimes they're 5 minute. Another idea is you can go right on to Amazon, or you can go into any craft and gift store and just get a simple sand timer or hourglass. You can get them in 10 or 15 or 20 or 30 minute, and you could order it for exactly what you wanted. So again, an air timer can be an incense cone. A fire timer could be a birthday candle. A water timer could be a water clock. And a sand timer could be any kind of egg timer or whatever that you'd like to use. The idea is to being able to just use something very simple, kind of Da Vinci, and very natural, elemental based, just to set aside a few minutes to take time to listen for the magic. Be safe, be kind, and be loved.
Well, it looks like the coffee cups are empty for this week. We hope you join us again next Tuesday, but you can find us at our website, 2youngcrones.com. That's the number 2, Young Crones.
We'd love to have you join our growing online Discord community. Check out our new Patreon presence. Just look for Young Crones Cafe. Through Patreon, you'll be able to make it to our Discord. We are also Young Crones Cafe on Twitter and Facebook.
Until then, remember, we are witches who work with energies to effect change.
We are believers in both immanent and transcendent divine.
We are celebrants of the passage of the solar and lunar cycles.
We are hedge walkers who pass back and forth between the worlds of the magical and the mundane.
We are seekers of knowledge.
And we are walkers of a spiritual tradition we call the Path.
So mote it be.
So mote it be.